Hello and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore and your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my marvelous co-host with me today, Matt Rossi. How are you doing today, Matt?
Painkillers are amazing, and properly used can make you feel like you're not in pain. It's really kind of something.
That is stupendous, and also seems like it would be logical to most people, but clearly is not to some.
It often does not work. A lot of times it just doesn't work. So when it does, yeah, okay.
Well, we're not here to talk about that today. Instead, we are here to answer questions from you, our wonderful listeners. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those into podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line and any special pronunciation of your name. If you want to hit us up on Discord, we have the Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is open for everyone. Same rules apply. We also have the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is set aside specifically for our Patreon subscribers. We tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on. And if you don't want to send us a message on Discord or email, you can send us a message directly on Patreon, and Liz will make sure it gets added to the master document of things that I have to talk about. Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and get right into it. The first one comes from Tetsemi. Thoughts on game mods that restrict or allow romance options that aren't available as the game shipped. Is this just a form of fanfic and let people enjoy what they want to enjoy, or does it take away from who that character is being presented as? I have mixed feelings on this and was curious as to your thoughts. Shipping character stuff and romance is always a very personal thing in games as far as I'm concerned. And unless it is a core feature of the game, any add-on that lets you do that is between the add-on and the person that decided to install it. I generally don't have a problem with it because it doesn't necessarily affect me. So I'm fine with them existing, and I'm fine with it being something that people can use to tell their own story. Because let's be honest, since RP has been around in World of Warcraft, people have shipped themselves with NPCs or shipped other NPCs with each other. Like, it's just a thing that happens. It's a reality of this type of game. When people feel strongly about certain characters, there's always going to be an element of that. And that's fine. Now, if it was demanded that everybody install the mod and one person's choices were canonical because of that, which again is absurd and would never happen, then I would have an issue with it. But it's fine. I think it's absolutely fine as long as it doesn't affect anybody else and it remains a personal choice. Matt, I don't know if you feel strongly about it one way or another.
I have strong feelings that might seem somewhat contradictory to people, so I'm going to break them up into sections. Section 1. I've written 4 novels, one of which was published by Monkey Brain Books, and the other 3 have not. If anyone cared enough about my stuff to write fanfic about it, I'd be thrilled. Yay, someone cares enough about this to write fanfic. Boo, in my head. I don't like the pairing they made, but that's not my problem because I still have my books that I can write and the characters will be as I say. I have the official, my canon is mine. If they made a video game of my books and someone wrote a mod to make 2 characters romance that I find personally icky, I'd still be pleased that someone cared enough. If that makes sense. Like, as the author, I feel like there's a certain amount of inherent just, yay that they even care to this kind of discussion. And I've seen that with a lot of game companies and mods. They're like, we just love that people care enough to do this. That doesn't mean we're going to enshrine your weird, Judy, Claire, male V threesome into our stories. But, good on you for liking it. So that's my first feeling. I think that these kind of things are fine because, it's a sign of people's investment more than it is anything else. It shows that they actually care so much about this that they're willing to go through a lot of time and effort, whether it's fanfic, whether it's a mod, what have you. That being said, there's 2 things that people do that irritate me to no end. One is, I'm just going to straight up call it whitewashing. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite games is Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. It is a game that I go back to again and again and again. One of the main characters is Sela, who is a paladin, and she's black. She's a black woman. I've seen hundreds of mods making her white. Why? She doesn't, there's no, like, her race has absolutely nothing to do with anything in the game. She's just a character in the game. She's not even romanceable. So if you've got some kind of weird fetish, she's not even that. So I don't understand this at all. Like, I don't get what you're doing when you do that. And I've also seen it with like people who don't like certain kinds of relationships to just take them out of the game entirely. And I'm not saying I should have the right to stop you, or anybody should have the right to stop you. I'm just saying it's icky. Like, okay, oh no, male romance. Here's an idea. Don't get into one. If there's male romance options in the game and you don't like that, don't play it. You're in charge of that guy. You know that, right? Your male character. Mm-hmm. If you don't want him to romance another male character, don't. But regardless, I'm not trying to stop anyone from making a mod. I just think that is icky. I feel like if you're going to do this kind of thing, mods should always err on the side of facilitating things that aren't in the game, not pruning things that are in the game out, especially when it comes to stuff like romance and relationships.
Yeah, and like in going a little bit further, right? Like there's a lot of games where relationships and romance options are integral part of the game, and there are certain things, like you pointed out, that you can't change that are or you can change with mods but are not part of the base game, and Judy is an example of that, right? Like, and this was a big topic of debate when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, and people are like, well, why can't my male V romance Judy? Because Judy doesn't like men or male-facing characters. It's just not her thing. And that is part of her story and background and who she is as a character. And a lot of mods were released that, took that away from the character. Those, I feel, are, again, it's questionable at best, right? Like, I don't think that
neither of us is arguing that they shouldn't exist or that you should feel bad if you did that. We're arguing that for us, it feels antithetical to the story of Judy's character.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, but because it doesn't really affect anybody but you playing the game, I guess that's, I mean, again, it comes down to the idea of it doesn't affect anybody but you. So it really doesn't matter in the long term. And I guess the answer for me is, I guess it really doesn't, because it doesn't really affect me. I just think I never understood the idea of using mods to change who a character was, because if you enjoy that character or like that character or are interested in that character, if you're changing a core aspect of them, are they still the same character? Now, again, it's a deeply personal choice, and I don't want to harp too much on it, but it's just something I never quite understood personally. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is really to say about it. I mean, unless Matt's got more, and I'm sure he does.
I mean, I do, but I don't know that I would say anything else that's particularly useful. I'm trying to think about how to put this. Basically, when I think about fanfic or anything like it, where like mods that alter gameplay, I think it's a little different in our video game, in that you are actively playing that game. So to a degree, you are kind of making the story as you go through it. I mean, that's just, the more that the game is reliant on changes and has consequences for actions, the more that's true. The more that you're, it's like one thing to, like, there aren't any romance options in Doom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you're going to put them in there. If you think you can write a mod to Doom that makes someone romanceable, okay, you're basically writing a whole new game at this point. And there's nothing wrong with writing a whole new game, but just it's certain things this doesn't work for.
Mm-hmm.
But for things that it does work for, I am never going to say that I think it's bad for people to have more control over the options that their character goes through. Oddly enough, I'm just gonna confess to this one. My very first character playing through Cyberpunk 2077 was male V,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't like him, so I went back and started a female V playthrough, and I was much happier with it. But for some reason, my female V playthrough bugged out because I didn't have mods. I still don't have mods in Cyberpunk. I play it unmodded just because it doesn't feel necessary. But I ended up romancing Panam.
Yeah.
On female V, which you're not supposed to be able to do. And she's still romanced. And that's not what they intended. And if I had deliberately done it, I'd feel a little weird about it. But because it just happened, and I still have the playthrough, and it's sustained through multiple patches they've put out. Like, they've patched the game like 12 times since I did this. I did this like in 2021, maybe. Like early 2021, like January or February. And that playthrough, I still have it. I took it through Phantom Liberty. She's still my girlfriend. She now comes over to my house. She slaps my butt. So that's in the game. You know what I mean? They had to put the ability for Panam to do all those things in order for me to be able to have them done. You know what I'm saying? They didn't take anything out that would have broken it. So I feel like to a certain degree, the game is robust enough that if somebody wants to write a mod where a character can do something that they wouldn't do as the game is written, as Joe has said, that's between them and the fence posts and the game. As long as it's when people go out of their way to make, like, yeah, I've made this mod so you don't have to see any of that bleep, and it's like, oh no, I'm not down for that. I'm fine with you not seeing it in your own game, but the idea that you felt you needed to take it out of a game when it's not something that you will see unless you do it, that's bothersome to me. But again, at the end of the day, I think it basically just shows people care. And I'm sorry, when you're out here trying to get people to care about the things you're writing or drawing or publishing or saying, and someone shows that they do, I think it's nice. That's just where I come down on it.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives you our insight into it. But I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which comes from Furitar. Unholy DK here over on Illidan. I have a question for Lorewatch spawned by the Azeroth D&D episode. What class do you guys think has the best representation in game? What classes have the most well-defined class fantasy, and what class do you think best represent diverse class fantasies? I'll let Matt go first on this one.
This one's kind of complicated.
It is. So let's break it down and do them one by one, I guess. So let's start with the first one. So what class do you think, if from D&D, would have the best translation or representation moving into WoW?
That's interesting because, I don't really even know how to address this because, how do you determine like what class from D&D is in WoW?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is a Death Knight a warlock?
No, I think Death Knight would be like an anti-paladin.
Except, kind of, they have like actual death powers.
Well, so does an anti-paladin. They summon undead and stuff like that, so I guess it would be close enough.
Also, anti-paladin, like, that's not the same thing as it, like, in 5th edition, I don't think we really have anti-paladins, do we?
I think there is.
The Oathbreakers.
Well, there's Oathbreakers. There is also an anti-paladin.
Yeah, but I would just say that when in doubt in a question like this, always go with the one that seems the easiest to say, and I'd say it's rogues. D&D's rogues and WoW's rogues are pretty easy to model against each other. They have a lot of similar abilities. They perform a similar role. There's obviously exceptions and options to do them in a slightly different way. I'd go with rogues. I would say that it's just so ingrained that you can't really look at them and say that they're significantly different. They have different mechanics, but they're performing the same function and in a very similar flavor.
I think my pick, and I think Matt will probably yell at me here. I think warriors and fighters have a decent translation too.
Oh, the problem we have with that is that warriors are actually also barbarians.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's that makes it kludgy for me.
Maybe, but I think that they're decent enough, and maybe counting them as both is fair. But
plus, I didn't want to say warriors because
everybody expected you to do that.
Yeah, everyone's going to say, "Well, he's going to say warriors, fighters are warriors." I'm like, no, I'm not going to say that. But I'm not arguing with you. I mean, it's not wrong.
And I'll go so far as to say that I think vanilla warriors, like going back way that far, are probably the most akin to what I would consider a D&D fighter, especially because back then,
they were almost 1-for-1. I would say that.
Yeah,
they were clearly based on them.
I think so too, and I think that there's some stuff that existed there, or you can see on if you play Classic, that no longer exists. Like warriors wanted to have a ranged weapon at some point. Like it wasn't necessarily the primary, but they had a ranged weapon slot.
And they used it. There was a lot. I knew people who played warriors in WoW and who did all sorts of stuff to try to push the utility of it. Yeah, yep. They wanted to be doing stuff. They wanted there to be. They would propose every time an expansion came up until Cataclysm. Every time an expansion came out, they would propose ranged warrior be a real thing. Like they wanted to have I think they call it dragoon in other games. They wanted to have the dragoon type ranged fighter thing happening with the warrior.
Yeah, well, dragoon I think is almost always exclusively associated with lances. So I don't think it was dragoon, but I know what you're talking about. But yeah, regardless, I think that they're the closest analog, at least as far as what I can see, for a translation of a decent D&D fighter in WoW. It's gotten a little bit more, like Matt pointed out, as we've moved on in WoW. I think warriors have a divergent path, so I think there is there's a weird split where half of them I think is equivalent to a battle master fighter, and half of them I think is equivalent to like, I don't want to say an ancestors, but the avatar barbarian. Like when you start going into like the Mountain King path and all that other stuff, like it really feels like that style of barbarian, that style of like towering titanic fighting entity that will just sit there and they can do this all day.
I think the real birth of that is when I finally somehow managed to like telepathically implant Titan's grip into someone's head. To the point where at the time when we were writing about it, someone was like, Rossi must have gone to the offices. And I hadn't yet.
Yeah.
But no, it was just Titan's Grip changes Fury Warriors. And when you have Titan Grip Fury Warrior, you are looking at some form of barbarian. They're no longer the spec that could play just a regular dual wielding fighter. They had to put that back in with Single-Minded Fury. Single-Minded Fury kind of turns you back into a dual wielding fighter, but even then the rage mechanic is too much a part of it. But I think you got a good point about, I'd say there's actually 3 archetypes that you can see in the warrior from D&D. The one you already pointed out, the Battlemaster fighter. If you go heavy protection, if that's what you're doing, you are tanking, it kind of moves into that just straight up, I want to be a meat shield type fighter. And then there's the barbarian, which I think you called pretty well, is the, suddenly get embiggened, smash everything. And even if you're not doing the embiggening route, there's still plenty of there's frenzy barbarian in there somewheres. So yeah, I'm not arguing with anything you're saying here. I don't think any of it's wrong.
Yeah. Now, another one that I do want to throw out there as well that I think is pretty close.
I mean, paladins, just in general, paladins trade pretty well.
I don't think so. I think there's a variety of reasons why I think that it's a lot.
Should I be saying that cleric then? Do you think cleric would work?
Cleric is closer to paladin, which is funny as far as I'm concerned. I think that's more accurate. when we could talk about that a little bit before I give my next one. So, I mean, the heavy armor use, the stalwart defender, having access to healing spells, and a cleric of the war domain really plays like a WoW paladin, as far as I'm concerned. With a WoW Retribution Paladin in specific, it has the ability to heal, but also it has the ability to do a metric ton of damage. And anybody who tells you that a war domain cleric can't do a metric ton of damage has never met one in game.
I mean, I played one just because they
It's
are
obscene.
that nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're especially nasty at low levels. Like the war domain cleric by level 3 can do like twice the damage of anybody else on the field. And they don't grow as hard as some other classes do. Like a 10th level, anything wizard is pretty nasty. But war domains start off strong and they don't ever drop off. Like just because they keep getting those higher level paladin spells to combine with, I can hit you as many times as I want with this big weapon.
Yeah.
When I get up to you, they are really strong. There's no disputing that.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably closest to the WoW Paladin representation, especially with like the two very distinct flavors, or I don't want to say two distinct flavors, but the multiple distinct flavors we have of, Paladin with whether it's a protection Paladin, whether it's a ret Paladin, or whether it's a holy Paladin. A cleric in D&D can fit all of those roles. In fact, in 3rd edition, 4th edition, and some of the kits from 2nd edition actually allowed clerics to be better tanks than fighters or barbarians, which was pretty wild, honestly, all things considered.
Yeah, because when you can heal yourself too, it's even better.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can stop you, essentially. As long as you've got, it's not like, as long as you can cast your spell and get it off, you're just standing right there going, boop, keep going, man.
Yep.
So yeah, no, there's a lot to that. I would not disagree with you. So go ahead with the one you were going to say next.
The other one that I think comes really close to D&D is, and it's the Ranger class, is specifically Marksman Hunter. I think a Marksman Hunter comes very, very close to what a traditional idea of a Ranger in Dungeons and Dragons is, complete with the animal companion, the range skills, the ability to cast or do certain things like spells that have an effect, whether it's seeing through your animal's eyes, whether it's, doing the whole feign death thing. All of these things are stuff that Rangers have been able to do in D&D. Maybe less so in the current edition, but that's a whole other topic for another day. But I think they come really, really close to that sort of Ranger setup, that fantasy. I don't know if you agree or not.
I don't disagree, but I do think that the Ranger is not... It's harder for me to say that the Ranger is a good marksman hunter. I think that a marksman hunter, if we had something like, I mean, I did a D&D game, that 5th edition game that was a WoW setting. It was set in Azeroth, and the Ranger I played, like, I was like, no, I had to put in levels of barbarian to get even close, and that's just not. It doesn't work for me just because of Marks is just better. Let me put it to you that way. That marksmanship hunter is just better than a D&D ranger.
Yeah, and I mean, it is definitely better. I will agree with that.
Yeah. And but I also, now that you've brought this into me, I also want to say that I think to a certain degree, there are certain hunter, probably subclasses that would make a good beast mastery hunter.
Yeah.
In fact, I think beast mastery hunter and those kits come together better. If you want a survival hunter, you have to go Gloomstalker.
Yeah, and even
you
then,
have to go Gloomstalker Ranger, and it's not even close.
No,
mechanically, it's not close. I will say that Gloomstalker Hunter, however, if you want to play D&D and you want to play a Ranger, give Gloomstalker a shot. It's a kind of limited playstyle, but it's very effective. I like Gloomstalkers, but I can see why other people wouldn't. It kind of takes you away from the whole fantasy in a lot of directions.
Well, and I guess let's use that as a transition for the next one there. So one of the other questions that we were asked here is what classes have the most well-defined class fantasy, and what classes do we think represent that to the best? And
Are we talking about in D&D or in WoW?
we're going to go in WoW here because I think that's the intent. I'll let you go first.
Okay. It isn't warrior. I'm gonna let's go back to Legion for a second here, because I think Legion is a good example of demonstrating this.
And topical,
Death
since
Knights,
we're looking at Legion remix and all that stuff coming.
Yeah. Death Knights, top tier. Class fantasy for days.
Oh yeah.
Very focused. You know who you are. Paladins, near the top.
Mm-hmm.
They have all these NPCs, different lifestyles, yet they all still work as paladins. The paladin class hall's got blood elves and tauren and dwarves and humans and Draenei, and they're all there. They're all palading it up. And now you'd even get more, because there's several allied races that are also paladins. So now you can have some Xandalari trolls in there or what have you. Paladins, top tier. Priests did real well. I think that their class order hall's just below the two I just mentioned. Hunters, pretty solid class hall. I actually liked it when I played my hunter. I was like, no, this is way better than I thought it was going to be. Still not up there with those ones I just mentioned. The mage order hall, another pretty solid order hall. Warlocks and demon hunters. Demon hunter one is weird, but it's got a lot going on. There's a lot of people to talk to. It feels very cohesive. Warlocks is really good. I don't think the Warlocks did bad at all. I think you'd expect Warlocks to do well in this expansion where demons are attacking, and yeah, story-wise they did. People who didn't get anything as good, Rogues. Rogues tried. The Rogue Order Hall tries.
Yeah,
but it never really pulls off what it looks like it's trying for. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to agree with you. I think Rogues, as far as like a class identity, has been struggling, and I think it's in part to the first part of our conversation. I think since they were put in game, they've been so close to a D&D rogue. And I think that there's been an attempt ever since, and I'll go as far as saying Burning Crusade, to try to find a unique identity for them. And this is where you get things like the Outlaw Rogue and stuff like that come in. And unfortunately, I don't know that it has done anything to really bring about a solid class fantasy for the rogues, because I think the rogues still don't know who they are. And I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. Like going back to Legion, like you said, oh, we're spies. Okay, well, let's lean into that. How does that class fantasy work? Or no, we're hired assassins. Okay, well, let's lean in that fantasy. How does that? And it's like these fragments of all these different tropes that fall under sort of like the rogue banner, without really committing to a very distinct identity. And then there may be somebody out there who loves rogues that is going to come for us, but I do think that they're one of the weaker ones in terms of representing the class fantasy, because they don't know who they are.
Yeah. I'm going to go further and actually even explain why I think that is, because I think Joe's hit the nail on the head here. The problem with rogues is they are too useful.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have them for all sorts of things. You need a spy archetype, rogues. You need an assassin archetype, the guys who sneak around with knives. That sounds like a pretty good assassin archetype. You need like a stealthy tracker. In a city, you're going to want a rogue. I mean, outside, you're probably going to want a hunter, but in a city, rogue looked like the way to go. Obviously, if you want to have a criminal organization, the guys who steal things, you go there.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, basically everything that you just call shady stuff ends up in the rogue group. And as a result, it's not like you would actually ever have an organization that did all this stuff. Because the city, the people who are like bounty hunters and trackers in the city, and the people who sneak around murdering people for money aren't going to get along, even though they do it the same way. And I feel like that's the problem rogues have. Then combine it with the fact that in every faction, they're going to have their own rogues, right? And it's not like those rogues have an organization. Like it makes sense that warlocks would all go to a warlocky place and talk about warlocking. Demon summoning and dominating. Sure, I was born in Stormwind, and Muktan here. He's obviously from Draenor originally. He's an orc, but we have the whole demon thing in common. We can talk about that. It's not like groups of people who are sneaky professionally necessarily want to hang out and be friendly. Especially when it's not like international spies who have a camaraderie. Even as they're trying to kill each other, they both have lived this life. If they were in a neutral location, they could sit and have a drink and talk about it. But if you have Murkarg, the slayer of 100 helpless souls, who sneaks in like without thought and dispatches his opponents and then leaves, that guy isn't going to have anything to do to talk about with Jimmy, who's a fence. They might run into each other when working at some points, but they don't have a common thing to talk about. Rogues have been made so universal and so usefully universal that it's less like a identity and more like a job. It's almost like it's a skill set that they have for performing various different tasks, and they don't really have anything in common besides the skill set. So there's no common ground like you see with paladins or death knights or even hunters who have the whole "we like the outside world" thing. But that's just me. That's my feeling on rogues. It doesn't mean that it's not a good class, and it doesn't mean it doesn't have good lore. It means that the lore is broken up into individual groups. Yeah. Like, is SI7 the same as Ravenhold? No, they're not the same group. But obviously, both of them have cool lore. The Horde had like 3 different rogue organizations at one point. I don't know how many they have now, but the lore is there. It just isn't unified.
Yeah, and there's another one that I'm going to throw out here that I think is going to surprise people for me to say, and I'm going to throw Shaman under the bus here.
I would say that class order was less than exciting.
It's not that the Order Hall was less than exciting, because I think the Order Hall was fine.
Oh, no, but the Order Hall was fine. The Order is less than exciting.
Yeah, so, and there's another reason. The reason for it is very similar, as far as I'm concerned, to Rogues. Everybody who has a shaman or has shaman as part of their society has a different interpretation of what that shaman is. And while they do a bunch of the same, base functionality, it's not the same for everybody. A Tauren shaman may look at its ancestors and they may have common ground with the broken, but it's not the same thing. Dwarf shaman may have common ground to talk with a troll shaman, but it's not going to be the same thing because they come from different places. And that's fine. But I also think that there's too much going on. And then mechanically over the years, and I will say this as far as like specs and things go, and especially with the hero talents, and I said this when the hero talents were there, I would love for these to bring back the class fantasy. I don't think they really did, because looking at totemic, if totems are supposed to be the class fantasy, why did I really only get one new totem? And everything I do revolves around that single totem. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. That totem is actually pretty baller, but it's one totem. So why is it called totemic? And it's like, oh, everything revolves around your totem. It's like, it really doesn't, though. Like, it's not quite all about that. Instead, it's more about, oh, you have some cooldowns and things that affect your totems, but you still only have 3 totems that you really wind up using. And the same thing with Farseer. Farseer doesn't do enough to really, as far as I'm concerned, bring that sort of feeling of wisdom. I summon ghostly ancestors when I heal under Farseer, and that's okay, I guess. But like, that generally isn't part of what the previous lore or of every single one of these is. They may revere their ancestors, but generally speaking, they don't call them the battle. Like, it's a weird mix. And I'm not saying this is that it's bad. I love playing shaman. I think shaman healing mechanically is some of the best that it's been in a very, very long time. But that also is not, I can sit here and say that I don't feel that it has a strong fantasy or identity. And even Elemental, I think, lacks a little bit on that, because while you are summoning stuff and like doing some damage, it's not quite the same. So That's my 2 cents, at least as far as that goes. I don't know if Matt wants to add anything to that.
I'm not going to add to that so much as I'm going to use it to jump off to something else. Take everything he just said about shamans, and warriors are that 5 times harder. Like, every warrior you meet, they're not going to think that they're members of a brotherhood with other people who do the same stuff, because it is the most universal thing you can do in WoW. Like, picking up anything and hitting somebody else with it is the baseline for every war we've ever seen. Even the most powerful magical civilizations that have ever existed on Azeroth still used shock troops, still used bodies. They still threw numbers of people at fights. And the warrior is just the ones who survive long enough to get so good at it that they can do crazy things that they shouldn't be able to do. Because the real true secret of the warrior class is that they have no magic. Everything they do is not magical. Even rogues use a little weird shadow magic at times to like go invisible or whatever. Canonically, they have magical stuff. Warriors don't. They're just angry enough to do that. And then at first that's like, okay, sure. Then you start looking at the stuff they can do. They can grow to be 3 times their normal size. How? I'm just that mad. They can insult a dragon so effectively that the dragon turns to punch them in the face. How? I just knew this would piss the dragon off. Like, it's crazy to even try and justify it. The class order hall brought in Odin and you being so good at fighting that after you got killed by the Legion, he brought you back to keep fighting. But notice that doesn't give you any magical powers. You're just a guy or a girl, or I don't know, if there's even, I don't think there's any current non-binary race, but there should be. Point being, it's just that. It's at its heart and its soul, it's just being real mad. And that doesn't give you a class flavor. Like, think about how you would describe the unified class flavor of a warrior. Like, what does your Tauren warrior have to talk about with even an orc warrior? Yeah, I like that. That sword you got's pretty nice. Yeah, it is pretty nice. It's not like that's unique to warriors. A paladin has a sword. Death Knights have swords. You're probably not going to go up to a Death Knight and compliment his sword because you're afraid he'll kill you and turn you into a walking zombie to follow him around into battle. But you'd still like the sword. It still looks cool. So yeah, in a weird sort of way, some of the classes that are fun to play and have great lore, their lore isn't such that implies any kind of class fantasy. Like, I could sit here and list a whole bunch of great warriors that I love to talk about. Deneth, Trollbane, Grom Hellscream, Garrosh Hellscream, Varian Rin.
Yep.
Yeah, lots of great warriors. And Anduin Lothar. But at no point could I imagine, can you imagine Cairn Bloodhoof shows up at a tavern and like one of the many dwarven heroes, I can't remember his name, but I really should because I wrote up Know Your Lore about the guy. The one who's like the last living member of the original Bronzebeard dynasty. Mm-hmm. Well, whatever. He's alive. He's a dwarf. What would they talk about? Hitting things with axes? They probably could talk about that for a while, but then what? How great it is to get drunk? Is this a class thing or is it just a living thing? Yeah. To a certain degree, warrior is even more than anything else. It's just a skill set. It's like, I'm good at these things. Yeah. And it doesn't really, like, to a certain degree, maybe it shouldn't have a class fantasy.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they're not looking at some of that stuff and trying to figure out the identity for things, because we do see that in like the coming expansions, there is probably at least a little bit of a look at it.
But, and they've done that for every class. I'm not disputing it.
But it doesn't mean that currently that they have a strong class fantasy. And
I'm never going to look at a warrior or a shaman Although at Shaman at least have some stuff I could see how to build it. And I was really kind of sad that Legion didn't. Especially with that campaign is actually really good.
It's a very good campaign.
Yeah, like when you're going around dealing with all the elementals, talking to them, you could really build something out of this. You could build, like, if you're a shaman in Azeroth, you are part of a group that is always going to be like the intercessors between the spirit world and the material world. That's your job. That's what you do. You go to the elements and say, what's going on here? Why is there a volcano in the middle of this desert here? I mean, of the forest here. Why did that happen? Could you guys stop with the lava? And they didn't grab the opportunity. I really thought we were going to get it in Dragonheart.
Dragonflight. Dragonflight.
Dragonflight, yeah, I really thought we'd get it in Dragonflight because the drakes were all empowered by elemental beings.
Yeah, so that and I think maybe, and this is an aside, that's kind of where I felt that when I started to feel that the shaman lacked a real distinct class identity as far as that goes, because it was something that I expected. You can go back and listen to this podcast prior to Dragonflight releasing, and you can go listen to the main show. And that was one of the things that I was hopeful for, was we're going to be dealing with elemental infused dragons at this point, or proto dragons, whatever they want to call them at the time. And that seems like something that the Farseer would be uniquely suited for. And we never got anything. We never got any payoff of that. We didn't go and talk to our old elemental contacts. We didn't say, hey, what's going on with this? Hey, remember that thing we decided that we were going to do where, we wouldn't BS each other, and we'd kind of like, you understand that I put you in the position you're in. You need to tell me what's going on. None of that. There was no payoff for it. And a lot of it was like, well, that's just forgotten stuff at this point.
Yeah.
And it felt bad. But it was at that point that I really started feeling like, okay, well, we spent what little time we had figuring out that we were going to be these like weird arbiters and go-betweens between the elementals and the living rest of the world. And we just don't do that anymore. And all three specs could do that. So it wouldn't even have to be a spec specific fantasy. But
you could absolutely do that with like an enhancement shaman. Heck, there's actually stuff that was put in the lore in other expansions that never really got picked up on. Mm-hmm. Like the way that goblins approach the whole shamanism thing, and then dark shamans. You there's a whole other side of shaman where you don't go in and ask them nicely. Where you go in and you beat them up until they do what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, to that effect, we used to have a spell, and I again, I'm always I don't like when things get taken away for weird reasons. We used to have a chain elemental where we could take and essentially polymorph or stun specifically elementals. And it was really, really cool and very flavorful, because it's like, okay, we understand dark shamanism is a thing. We understand that like we have the ability to make real distinct impact on elementals. And by the way, you're chained here. Think about what you've done. And instead that gets taken away. And it's like, okay, that doesn't, I can hex somebody and make them a little tiny raptor, but I can't chain an elemental in place when dark shaman absolutely exist. And it's like,
yeah. And we had chain elemental before them.
We did.
Yeah. I remember using it in BC, didn't we?
No.
Or was it Wrath?
Kata.
Wow, I'm playing the Kata. I thought it was. It's still though. That's before. That's before anything to do with like the dark shaman and shit.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry for that. Yeah, no, it's weird. It is weird that shaman who have all the tools, like all the tools for a cool class fantasy are there. It's just nobody wants to put them together. I don't get it. I mean, and this is like we haven't talked about mages really. We haven't talked about warlocks here or even demon hunters. I feel like all those guys still have a pretty good class fantasy.
I would agree.
Like, yeah. It's just that, I almost feel like it's too obvious. Like, we know what mages are. They do that. You point, you can just point at Medivh, go, those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know.
And even then, like, and we know that mages are getting a redefinition of what the mage class fantasy is. That's one of the
Because
themes here,
that's a
and
whole big
it's a whole big thing with the Kirin Tor and rediscovering who they are. It's a theme, and like they're paying attention to it, which is why I'm saying I'm hopeful that they'll look at others as well, and
I
give
honestly
them the same treatment.
I almost don't want them to do it with warriors. I almost feel like the class fantasy of warriors is like the the Glenn Cook Black Company books. It's just I show up and I do my job. Whether I'm a soldier for one of the factions of Azeroth or one of the nations of Azeroth, whether I'm a mercenary, whatever I am, the only brotherhood we have is the only brotherhood we need. We are the people who get our fingers down there and get dirty. And that's it. And that's all it has to be. Please don't have Odin come back. Well, I mean, have him come back. We should definitely beat Odin up. But please don't, like, the Order Hall felt almost, and I think you felt it with the NPCs that showed up. Like when Danath first showed up and said, "Oh, I'm glad you're okay," or when I keep wanting to call him by a different name, but Sorfang. I don't know why. That was really having a hard time. I kept trying to call him Broxigar. I guess technically Broxigar was Bloxigar Sorfang. But nevertheless, when Sorfang shows up and you duel him briefly, it doesn't feel like a place he belongs. And if you have a warrior class hall and Sorfang doesn't feel like he belongs there, it isn't right. I think even people who played Heavy Alliance, know that Sorfang is one of us.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a warrior, that guy is like, you would look up to him. Like when Varian gives him his son's body, if you play Alliance on the top of the Ice Crown Citadel, that is a moment that makes sense. That Varian would respect him that much. That Varian would go to him and say, I don't want to make you feel worse. As both a father and as someone who's faced war as a father, I don't want to make this worse for you. And Sorfang just thanks him and takes his son. That's what I want for Warrior Class Fantasy and WoW. I don't necessarily want us to have a big order hall and us to have like a special secret handshake. I feel like just being a warrior is enough. So to a certain degree, I feel like they don't really need it. But everybody else, like, I feel like it should be there, especially when in the class, like, bringing up Shaman is completely messed with my head here because, you know that I love Shaman.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it for a long time. Bring back Sentry Totem. But, yeah, the fact that they have missed multiple chances at this point to really come up with a true blue class fantasy for Shaman is kind of crazy. It like everything is there and they haven't done it.
Well, yeah, we could have done it in Shadowlands. We could have done it in Dragonflight. Many opportunities, but I think we can go ahead and move on. I don't think people want to hear me complain about that for another 20 minutes.
And if they don't, well, I'm sorry, but you push the button, you take your chances.
Yeah. All right. So this next one comes from Karaana Fellhart. With the announcement of Legion Remix, I'm curious, what are you looking forwards to the most? I've been going through the different class halls to get the mounts I missed, and it makes me wonder, will we be getting mount recolors? If so, does that mean priests will find more seekers? The seekers are said to be the last 3, but are also said to help speed the watchers to sites of corruption, which I feel would be helpful going forward into Midnight. Do you think they might make alternate colors of the class mount for everyone to use? If at a base level with the mount question, if remists is anything to judge, yes, we're going to get recolors. So yeah, I'll just throw that out there. I think that's very, very likely that we're going to get recolors of class mounts. I would be surprised if we did not. But Matt, what are you looking forward to the most with the Legion remix?
Hanging out with Odin again. I said this at the time, guys. Being the battle master, being the most amazing warrior on all of Azeroth.
Just makes you the better Pokemon.
Yeah, you are. It turns you into freaking Pikachu. The guy literally has me proving my worth every other time I see him. To the point where at one point I'm in a raid and he has my entire raid prove their worth. And I'm like, you make me do this every day. Like, I honestly, the fact that Pikachu hasn't just Electro slapped Ash in the face more than he did, because, let's be upfront, Pikachu and Ash started off rocky. I'm not looking forward to seeing Odin again. Let me put it that way. That being said, there is a lot to like about Legion. I had a lot of fun playing it. I liked being a warrior in it. I'm hoping that they'll do something. There's an armor set that you used to be able to get for doing like hard mode, or I forget what they called it because it was in Pandaria. There was like a hard mode,
mode.
extreme dungeon thing. You could get a really cool armor set.
Challenge modes. There was challenge modes.
Challenge modes.
It was before. It was Mythic Plus before Mythic Plus was the thing.
They took it out when they went into Warlords of Draenor because they didn't want people to just go through with one character and blow them all up and get the sets. But I feel like recolors, the thing is those sets did come back in Legion as versions of, we got versions of those sets as our Order Hall set. Like when you got your complete Battle Master set, it was a scaled down version of that challenge mode armor. I think they should bring that back as the whatever the class name is for. Remember for Warriors it was Battle Master. I think the Shaman one was like
Farseer,
yeah. They should get that set again in a different color so it doesn't invalidate the people that actually got it. But bring that look back, because that look was really cool. Even if it was a different color, it would be really cool. I'd love to see them do that. I do think they're going to bring back recolors of the various class sets. Again, if they don't bring back those looks, the ones that they do have, they're going to recolor. The weird thing about Legion is that you got your artifact, and that was it for weapons for the entire expansion. And then what you got were looks. Some of those looks are not possible to get anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's going to be something I would look forward to getting. There are a few of them I didn't pick up. I never did much of anything prot in Legion. I just didn't. It was the one time I really just didn't do anything prot. So there's stuff I would like to do. I want to see what they do with the Mage Tower. Like how are they've already they did an extended remix of the Mage Tower recently. So I feel like they've got a fairly good idea of how to make it fit into the remix formula. So I want to see how that works and what they do with it. I did like Legion quite a bit. I just don't have anything I can sit here and think about as like, ooh, this is a big story moment that you're going to go want to see. Because I feel like everybody knows what the story moments are. And if you don't, I don't want to ruin them for you. There's some cool stuff that happens in this expansion that if you didn't see it and you don't know what it was, I don't want to take that from you. Oh, and Argus. Argus, I am so looking forward to Argus.
Yeah, especially
Argus
now that we know, we have the hindsight going back to Argus is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus for me, I think Argus was the best of Blizzard's. Here's a new endgame zone full of stuff to do that they ever did. I don't think that the stuff they did after Argus was as good, and I don't think the stuff they did before Argus was meant to even exist. Like Warlords of Draenor, when you ended up stuck in Hellfire Peninsula for like a year, I don't think that was intentional. I definitely think it was inspiration for Argus, but I don't think they meant to do that. I think they just couldn't get the expansion out fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
So Argus felt just long enough, and then you went into the new expansion, and I think that Legion and specifically Argus did one of the better end game zones, and I'm really looking forward to going back and hunting for some weapon looks I didn't get. So yeah.
So one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and I didn't think I would when Remist was first available, was I enjoyed the idea of getting to experience the expansion from a different class. And while it's not exactly the same thing, it's usually it's an excuse, right? Everybody's doing it. Everybody in my guild does it when it's time. We all do it together, and it's a great way to kill time between expansions. But in this particular case, I use it as a way to level a character to max that I don't currently have at max, which leaves right now 4 classes for me to choose from. So I will either be doing the monk, the warlock, the death knight, or the demon hunter. Those are the only 4 classes I currently do not have at max level. And
dude, do demon hunter.
That's what everybody keeps saying.
You don't have a death knight, right? You don't have a death knight?
I have a death knight that got to level like 50 or 60, whatever the cap was back then, and have not touched since.
They have a really great order hole too. But the demon hunter, yeah.
Yeah, so, and again, this is something that I think is going to be, for me, an excuse to sort of experience that. And yes, I understand that the Legion remix is going to, speed you through the leveling and have different things that you wind up doing and not quite be the same experience, but it is an excuse that I want to use. And
because it's just something to get you to do it.
Yeah, and it might be a thing where I do multiple, depending on how long we have between this releasing and the next expansion, where, it might be that I do Demon Hunter and Death Knight. It might be that I do Demon Hunter and Warlock. It might be that I do Demon Hunter and Monk. But I'm looking forward to seeing these places because at the time when Legion was around, I did not get to see these order halls. And I haven't really done a leveling experience because I haven't really had a reason to with those classes to take me back there to do them because I've always had something else that I've been working on, whether it's getting my shaman caught up on gear, whether it's doing Mythic Plus content, whether it's leveling my paladin and gearing up my paladin, which I will admit has been a ton of fun, which we'll probably talk about on the main podcast as a topic. But getting to experience those stories, getting to experience those characters, and particularly how those characters view the events of Legion, I think is really kind of interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to that in particular. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Matt.
No, I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way. I definitely know I'm not going to do a warrior again, because like I said, I don't want to see Odin again. I might do my paladin. Because I never quite finished the Paladin Order Hall.
Yeah.
I got really close, but I didn't quite finish it. So
and the Paladin Order Hall is so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the history of it is just amazing. So yeah, I remember seeing Lady Mara Fordragon's statue, and I'm like, you still didn't explain if she's related to Volva. But yeah, just the whole thing is really. The thing is that the Paladin one and the Death Knight one kind of connect. Like, if you're a Death Knight, you do something that the Paladins don't like.
Oh, as a Death Knight, you do a bunch of stuff that a lot of the classes don't like.
Yeah, but this one's a very specific thing.
Well, think about it now, though.
We're not talking about it.
Well, think about it now, though, too. On top of that, Evokers are in the mix now as well. And how do they feel about a certain thing?
Yeah, I hope they get their own order hole.
They don't. They're not going to. You're going to...
I know. Right now, if you play an Evoker and you do that, you go to Legion, they just kind of stick up a painting.
You work with Khadgar.
Yeah.
You work with Khadgar. So, I mean, I think that's going to do it for us today. I don't know if there's anything else that we can really add, but I do want to thank you for joining us. As always, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to your generous support at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast signing community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance of having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and ads-free site experience. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in to podcast@blizzardwatch.com. We do have 3 shows. We have the Lore Watch feed. We also have the main show, which is live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and you can catch it later on in the week as a recording. And we also have a monthly podcast talk show for Tabletop called Tavern Watch. And we do a monthly live play where we release about 3 episodes as well through the Tavern Watch imprint, where we cover various TTRPGs. If you've listened to some of them in the past, we've done Pigeons 11, which is exactly what it sounds like. At the time of this recording, we have just finished recording a wonderful session of Masks, a superhero teenage role-playing game. And there's many more to come. We have a lot of stuff planned and we're excited for it. But again, if there's something you want us to play or something that you are interested in us doing, let us know. We're open to it and we'd love to hear from you. If you want to let us know on Discord, we have 2 channels set aside. We have the Q and Podcast Questions channel. Same rules apply, letting us know what show it's for and any pronunciation of your name. You can do the same thing there if you want us to cover specific topics on certain things. And if you are a Patreon supporter, as a way of saying thank you, we have the Patreon Q and Podcast Question channel set aside specifically for you, where we will look there first. As a matter of fact, there was a month a couple of years ago at this point where one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers floated an entire month of TTRPG play because they wanted us to play different games. Not saying that you have to do that, but it's something that you can do. And we were more than happy to take their suggestion and run with it. And then if you want to hit us up directly on Patreon, you can as well. Liz will get us those messages, and we'll be more than happy to take those into consideration. I will add them to the master document. But with that, folks, we'll see you next week.